Maryland basketball is having one of its best off seasons ever.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And this episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further and even wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out on NissanUSA.com. Maryland basketball is having one of its best off seasons ever. And I'm serious about that. I don't know if I remember my time in offseason that Maryland basketball is putting together. I haven't seen an offseason quite like this one that they are putting together, especially over the last couple of days. You think of an offseason as kind of a span of a longer time, but it's really been, I haven't seen such a good couple of days that Maryland basketball has ever put together, not on the court in terms of adding players, in terms of keeping players. I haven't seen us put together kind of this type of talent in the span of a couple of days for Maryland basketball, and it gets me super pumped up for next season. We're not even done with this season. We got the Sweet 16 today and tomorrow with some really good matchups to look forward to. Even if you're not a Maryland fan, there are games that you can absolutely watch and enjoy watching. But I'd be lying if I said I have not thought about next year already a ton over the last couple of days. It's all I've been thinking about. All I can think about is how good this team looks already on paper. And of course, the game's not played on paper, but with the ads that we have gotten, just the potential and how special this group could be if it is able to come together the right way, which I think it will. And the thing is, we're not done yet. There's still room to add players. There's still a potential of some guys leaving maybe. But I think our core is here, and the guys that we wanted, we have gotten. And I think this team is absolutely on the right track to get back into the mix next year, into the Big Ten best. And next year, a lot of teams are going to get worse. You think about Purdue. They're no longer going to have Zach Edey. He's no longer going to be there. You think about other teams in the Big Ten could drop off and lose some guys and some seniors. And I'm looking at Maryland as a team that absolutely could get back to being one of the better teams in the Big Ten, the way it should be, because of this crazy offseason that we needed to have. After last year, after what we put together, for me to feel better, for everyone to feel better, we had to have this type of offseason. And this is after the season that we had. We deserve to have an offseason like this. And it's kind of crazy that we're able to put together such a great group of players in the portal and staying because of how bad we were last year. I honestly would have thought that, okay, like maybe we could get someone good, but we weren't going to get quite the players that maybe that like everybody wants to get, the top end guys. But we've been getting top end players in the portal and exactly what we needed. Kevin Willard has done what he has done this offseason has been pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And I haven't seen that this really happen. I haven't seen an offseason like this, and I really think it's one of the best ever. Part of the reason you could say that is because the transfer portal has obviously stepped up over the last couple of years and it's taken on a new level. So we haven't really quite gotten that complete like free agency type of feel to college basketball in the past. Obviously players did transfer, but there was a lot of rules behind it. It was a lot harder to do. A lot of people would have to sit out a year. Like you didn't really want to transfer a lot of the time. But so that's a big reason why I say it's one of the best off seasons I've seen, because the off seasons haven't been as big as they are now. But even if they were, I'm still pretty sure that this is one of the better off seasons you would see a team have. And I'm not totally familiar with what other teams are doing, but it's hard. It would be hard for me to find someone that's having a better offseason than what we are doing right now. I don't know if you can point to a team in the country. I don't know if you can point to a team in the Big Ten, honestly, that has done what we have done, that has gotten the caliber of players that we have gotten. And the thing is, everything has gone our way. I don't think there's been one thing so far that's been like, oh, like that didn't go our way. Every single thing, if I made a wish list of what I wanted to happen, the top 3 things I think all got hit. All got hit. The odds of that happening is pretty crazy, and it's not supposed to happen. It'd be like if you made a bet and the odds would probably be like plus 1,000, like for every single one of these things to fall in place. I would have probably taken 2 out of 3 of these things happening. I would have probably taken 1 out of these 3 or 4 of these things happening, but every single thing fell into place for Maryland basketball going into next year. And there should be no excuses. I don't know in terms of like ranking what will be, because a lot of that is based on what you did last year. But in terms of the talent, I'm going to go ahead and say it. We have top 25 type of talent. I really believe that. We have a ton of depth also. There's a lot of players that if they improve as well, you're looking at a scary bunch of guys coming in. And let's get into some of these guys that we got. It started all with getting 5-star Derek Queen. It started there. Getting 5-star Derek Queen was like, okay, maybe some of you guys don't consider that the offseason, but to me, that was the offseason. That was the end of the year. It was over. Our season was terrible. I was looking at next year. Maybe not the coaching staff. Obviously, I still talked about the games and stuff, but I was kind of looking forward to next year and seeing what could happen, who could we potentially get. And, of course, Derek Queen was number 1 on our list. So it started with him. You add in a 5-star big that has NBA potential, that has a complete type of game, that's one of the best players in the country. It starts right there. You add in a guy that's going to be maybe one of the best bigs in the Big Ten right away, one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten for sure right away. It starts there. You get your guy and 5-star big Derek Queen. And it's like, okay, it's like, oh, there's still a whole lot of holes on this roster. We're losing Dante Scott. We're losing Jamir Young. And it's like, okay, could Julian Reese leave? There's been reports that Julian Reese is probably going to hit the portal. Will he leave? Will he come back? He's an all Big Ten type of player. He averages 14 points per game, 2 blocks, second in the Big Ten in double doubles. It's like, are we going to be able to keep him? Probably not. Probably not. We're going to have to use the portal to get other guys. But it's like, boom. The other day, Julian Reese announced that he's staying at Maryland. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know how everything came into fruition. I don't really know. I think a big part of it's the NIL. I think that's a big – Maryland must have stepped it up in some type of way, because I just didn't see us keeping Reese, getting Derek Queen. I didn't see us doing that. And then suddenly you put those two together, and it's like, is that the best front court in the Big Ten next year? It might be. It might just be. And if you have 2 guys of that caliber in your front court, it creates a ton of problems for the opposing team. But it's still like, we're still looking at it, and it's like, okay, we might have the best front court in the Big Ten next year, but we're not going to be able to shoot the ball, and it's going to be really hard without guard play, without replacing Jamir Young. And it's like, bang, we get 2 guards in the portal that are going to be impact players, like not just impact players, really good players for Maryland, and they both have 3 years of eligibility remaining. One, you get Rodney Rice, who people won't know as much about, and he was still pretty big time in the portal. Well, I know Maryland fans know a lot about him because we recruited him out of high school, 4-star, top 100 player out of high school, really good player. Things didn't work out for him at Virginia Tech. I don't know what happened last year, but you add him. He's young. He can shoot the ball. He can score the ball. He does a lot of things at a really high level. He's a really good basketball player, and people will realize how good Rodney Rice is. I think he's a very top-end player, and I think he would have started for us this year if he was on this Maryland team. He can create his own shot. He does a lot of good things. We add him to a team that needed guard play and needed shooting, and then it's like we get the number 1 point guard in the transfer portal in Jacoby Gillespie. It's like, what else could we possibly ask for? We got a guy in Gillespie that might come in and be one of the best players in the Big Ten, and it's like we still have 3 years of him. 3 years of Rodney Rice. Who knows what happens with Derek Queen? And you get Julian Reese back for his senior year. It's like, are you serious? This is one of the best off seasons I've seen from Maryland basketball. And I don't know if it's the NIL. It has to be stepped up NIL. That has to be one of the things that stepped up, because I don't see us getting all these different players after the year that we had. But give credit to Kevin Willard, because he's putting on an absolute master class, and we still have a spot ready. And the thing is, if you are able to hold on to Jahari Long, I don't know what's going on with Jahari Long's injury. I couldn't figure it out. I'm still going to try and figure out what happened with Jahari Long. And then you hold on to Jordan Geronimo as well as backups and Matty Torre, and you still have your 2 freshmen from last year that, even though they struggled, are supposed to be really good players, and Kaiser and Deshaun Harris-Smith. We're looking at this team going into next year and saying, wow, this team can be really good, and we still have another player to add in the portal. And I'm excited to see who else we add into that room. I think it's going to be a really good player. And so this is definitely, to me, with all the additions that we made, one of the best off seasons I have seen from a Maryland basketball team ever have, and maybe the best off season ever. We have talked about question marks and things I'm concerned about in the spring. But how about we take a more positive run? What are things that I have confidence going into spring football about? What players do I have confidence? What position groups do I have confidence in? I will tell you about that after this ad from Bettor Together. Tired of the same old daily fantasy grind where you make a roster, cross your fingers, and hope for the best, or losing on the last leg of your pick'em entry? Introducing Bettor Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork trumps talent, and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more than or less than on real-time player stats. Strategize with your partner to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. Bettor Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. Bettor Together offers a familiar experience for existing daily fantasy players with a social twist. You can play with a friend/teammate and provide a make sense of enhances to the social experience of watching sports. It makes you realize that daily fantasy sports is fun alone, but it's a lot like other things. It's better when you're doing it together with friends. Download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember the code LOCKEDON, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The North Carolina Tar Heels can only be described as the Armada. This one seed is as hardcore as it gets out there. So it's no wonder they secured a spot in the Sweet 16 this Thursday against Alabama in the NCAA tournament. They're the favorite pick by many to make a run for a championship. The Iowa State Cyclones can be described as a Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country. They have a date with Illinois this Thursday in the Sweet 16. The NC State Wolfpack are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in their first 2 games in the tournament, with wins over Texas Tech, Oakland, and have a set to play Marquette in the Sweet 16. They said win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Golden Grizzlies have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. What am I most confident about going into spring football for the Maryland Terrapins? What players, what position groups, what am I most confident about? I'll be lying if I said that there's a ton of stuff I'm confident about going into next year's football season. I don't have a ton of areas that I look at this team and say, yeah, like I'm confident there. I'm confident in that. I can't say there's a ton of those spots where I feel really good about for Maryland football. I think there are some spots where it's like there are some good players there, but I think we have a lot more question marks going into this season than we did going into next year. But there are some groups that I am confident into going into the spring. Starting with the running back room, Roman Hemby and Colby McDonald as a duo, I feel really good about. Roman Hemby had a little bit of a down year last year, so I know he's going to be trying really hard to rebound and to get back to what he was. He's also going to be looking and eyeing towards the NFL. Mel Kiper had him top 5 as the number 2 back in this year's class for a while, but he didn't end up playing very well at the end of the year. Had really good moments, of course. Really good player, and I know how good he can be. And so that's a big reason why I have confidence as him, especially being a 2-year starter now. I think I have a lot of confidence in Roman Hemby, and I feel really good about him. And then Colby McDonald as well. Colby McDonald was probably the most underrated player on our team last year. You could give him more carries than what he got last year because Antoine Littleton is now gone, which I think might actually help the room a lot because I think Antoine Littleton had trouble last year getting yards. I'm not saying the offensive line was awesome, but I do think now having Antoine Littleton gone could open up the carry for Colby McDonald, who absolutely was torching it up sometimes in terms of average yards per carry, and I think we needed to give him more. So I feel really confident in Colby McDonald, and I don't think people realize how good he is. He's not going to he's not a crazy talent or anything like that, but he's just a really good football player that knows how to play, and I like that. And they each give us a little bit of speed that I think we need from that room. A lot of it's going to be how the offensive line blocks, but that's my thing. I have confidence in the running back room to be able to find the holes, to be able to play really well, and get back to being a good running back tandem and having a really solid average yards per carry and touchdowns. Wide receiver room, probably the most confidence I have in one spot in terms of 2 players, Caden Prather and Ty Felton. What they did last year, I have complete confidence that they're going to be able to do it again. A lot of it's going to depend on quarterback play, but going into the spring, I don't know if there's 2 guys that I have more confident in or a position group that I have more confidence in. I do have question marks who's going to step up as the 3rd guy and kind of the 4th guy and give us some depth in that room. I think there's plenty of guys to be able to do that have the talent to do it, but it's going to be interesting to see who actually does it. But in terms of having top-end talent at wide receiver in the Big Ten, I really like Caden Prather and Ty Felton to give us a shot to win a lot of games, stretch teams down the field, get open in terms of the intermediate routes, get open on 3rd down. I really think they're top-end players. I think they have really good size as well. Ty Felton has a lot of speed, and I'm excited to see what they can do. Our defensive line unit, I think there's a ton of talent up there. We can go through a bunch of guys that are returners. Almost everyone returns in that middle of the defense. You got Tommy King Basote inside, and then you got multiple players on the edge that are returning that I really like, whether it's Kellen Wire or Donnell Brown or Quayshawn Fuller. There's a ton of talent, and that defensive line unit should be really good. There's no reason why they shouldn't be a top unit in the Big Ten because everyone's back. It's just going to be in terms of can they live up to their talent. But I have a lot of confidence in that room. And then even the linebacker room, even though we lost maybe our best, most talented player in Jayshawn Barham, I really think that room has the pieces to still be really good. Ruben Hippolyte is going to be a really good player. People forget Ruben Hippolyte was 3rd team All Big Ten last year, one of the top players in the country. So I have a ton of confidence in Ruben Hippolyte and what he can do, and I think he's going to be a top player for us. And then there's also a bunch of guys like Go Tag, Caleb Wheatland, and younger guys in that room that should take a step up, and I have confidence in that room. And then lastly, I have confidence in Dante Trader at safety. I don't know who the other starter is going to be. That's a big question mark. But Dante is definitely one of the best in the Big Ten, and I have confidence that he's going to continue to play that way. So I have confidence in different spots. I would say there's a lot more question marks, but that's kind of how football goes a lot of the time because you're usually replacing a good amount of starters, and there's just always question marks, I feel like, in football. But I do have confidence in a lot of different guys on the team and the team in general. Can Jamir Young get drafted to the NBA? I will tell you about that after this ad from Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on the Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. Learn more. Visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Jamir Young's NBA. Can he make it? I think he can. I think Jamir Young has a future in the NBA, and I think a team should take a shot at him. I think he's gotten a little bit underrated and under the radar a little bit, especially last year. He was first team All Big Ten, but I think he easily could have been like an All-American. If Maryland's a better team, I think you're looking at him as that type of guy. But I still have confidence that Jamir Young can make it to the NBA, can get drafted. A lot of it's going to depend on the combine process and all that weird stuff that goes on before, maybe how he interviews with teams. The NBA is a little bit different than the NFL. I feel like the combine and stuff is a little bit more important. The NBA, it's a little bit different, but I still think a lot of that stuff is going to be important in separating himself. I'm not saying he's going to be like a lottery pick or first-round pick, but I think he definitely has a shot to get drafted. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's able to be on an NBA roster. I could see him going like second round. I think there's a lot of guys. I think in the second round, that's your chance to either take a complete flyer on a guy that has traits maybe, but there's a lot of guys that go higher in the draft that it's like you're just taking kind of a guess on because you're hoping their upside. The NBA draft is a lot about upside, but a lot of those second round picks are guys that were good in college, know how to play basketball, and you can kind of depend on them to come in and maybe be a backup or a guy that just relies depth, even if he's not going to play. And a lot of those guys end up being pretty good players sometimes. Not always, definitely not always, because it's just different in the NBA. It's a different game. But I feel like Jamir Young's game kind of is a lot of what the NBA is today. Number one, I think shot creation. Guys that can get their shots get paid money in the NBA. That's just how it works. Guys that can create their own shot, the guys that can score, whether you think of Luka, whether you think of SGA now, I think that's a really popular one. And obviously Jamir Young's not that, but Jamir Young's a guy that can get his own shot. And when you want guys in the NBA that can create their own shot and create for others, that's the most valuable thing, because not everyone can do that. There's not an unlimited surplus of those type of guys. You can find a guy that can play that's a 3-and-D guy, and maybe those guys are important too, but guys that can create their own shot off the dribble like Jamir Young can, there's not a whole lot of those. And I think Jamir Young can do that, whether it's a pick-and-roll game, whether it's on his own, whether it's a mid-range pull-up game, three-point shot. I think he can do a lot of those type of things to help out an NBA team, and I think he fits in as a backup point guard. He's going to do everything right. He's been in college for a while now, so you know he's got veteran presence. He went absolutely nuclear last year for Maryland basketball, dropped 30-some games, absolutely carried the team, did everything in his will. I think that works in the NBA as a backup guard, a guy that will compete every single night because they know that their job isn't guaranteed, and a guy that can just create offense off the bench. I could be completely wrong. There's probably a really good shot he doesn't get drafted to anyone, but I really do think that he has a shot. I don't really know what happens, but he does have some stuff working against him. He's an older guy. NBA doesn't like that. The NBA draft is almost all about potential and what you can possibly become. They don't like guys that are older, on the older side, but you do look at guys, they do get drafted that are on the older side, just not super early. You could also say that he is a little bit small at only about 6'1". NBA doesn't like small. Basketball in general doesn't like small. But those things are going against him. But that's why he's not going to be a first-round pick. If he was 6'5" and a freshman, maybe he'd be a one-and-done. But that's not what he is. So I do think he can get drafted. I do think even if he doesn't, he's going to have a chance to prove himself, whether it's in the G League or overseas, that he can really do it. And I think he has a big future in basketball, even if it's not in the NBA. He will definitely be on someone's summer league roster. And I want to see what he's able to do, because I think he can be a pretty good player overall. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball, so thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.